The typical short reign from Mercedes Mone, but what is her next move and why did she lose the IWGP Women's Championship? We'll be talking about this and more in today's episode of WrstlXtra. Stay tuned.
Yo, this is WrstlXtra. I'm your boy A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate. Always joined by my trios team, Mex, the WrestleManiac, if you will. And of course, Gerard Barner, the Professor. Mercedes Mone is officially bankrupt. Mercedes Mone lost the IWGP Women's Championship over the weekend. We talked about this last week, about the potential outcomes of this match, what we thought would probably be best for both New Japan and Mercedes Mone herself. And both parties decided not to listen to us. Who are we? They didn't listen to us. They said, you know what? Let's cut this reign short. Let's give you the typical Mercedes Sasha Banks, Mercedes Mone short reign, and see what's going on from there. Mex, I'm gonna go to you first with this one. It was you that kind of let me know about, it was you that suggested about 2 or 3 weeks ago to put the potential of Mercedes losing this championship. What do you make of this whole thing now? And where does, not necessarily Mercedes, but where does the women's championship go from here? That's the question.
We were saying that she should keep the title. As long as she's going to be there, she should keep the title because she is the big name. She is, the conversation, as she says. And wherever she goes with that title, the fans, especially the fans that aren't used to watching the Japanese products, whether it be Stardom or New Japan, will follow. Now, she's dropped the title to a formidable opponent. That match was very, very good. I wish they gave it even 5 to 10 minutes more, but the sequence that put away Mercedes was great. And then she showed her respect at the end, saying that she's still the CEO, but Mayu Iwatani, as she calls herself, the icon of Stardom, you are truly the icon. So she put her over. I expected the flogging that Mercedes got because she's been running her mouth, she's been treating Iwatani bad, so it was a really kind of stiff match in places. And the result that I predicted some weeks ago, we got. Now, what is the confusing part is that it seems like this run in Japan isn't quite over yet. She was fast after the match itself to kind of announce her next date, which is under the New Japan umbrella, but will be in the States. So it does beg the question, why did she drop the title then? The only thing I could think of is, situations where we've called upon it, even in Western wrestling, where, this person is above the title. They don't necessarily need it. We're still going to tune in. Maybe they've seen that, even as she has been champion in the short stint, I think 60 something odd days, she hasn't main evented any one of these cards she's been on. Which we thought, at least for some of them, at least for maybe the Stardom show that's just passed, would have been a given. But they've obviously chosen to prioritize, I guess, in this particular one, the Stardom women's title. The previous one was the IWGP, the men's title. So, yeah, she's still pulling in the numbers. She's obviously still doing her bit. I saw, once she done that press conference, I saw people online tweeting saying that, she's coming to you. I can't remember where it is in the States, but they're saying, she's coming there. They've bought their ticket already. Nothing announced, her opponent not announced, her match not announced, the card not announced. So this just shows the effect that she's having anyway, despite even losing this championship. She said, I feel broken, but I called my CPA and I'm still rich. Oh, you move, innit? Like, oh yeah, she's got all the puns, and it's just a very odd thing. I guess they've used her to shine a light on Stardom, the other women in there, albeit kind of short. And I'm sure she'll kind of circle round now to get into, you know, some of the other female competitors on the roster. Her versus Julia is the one that a lot of people are screaming for. Julia is, I guess, I've always thought she is somewhat very Western in her her packaging anyway, and probably somewhat taken bits from the Sasha Banks character with what she's done, and her match in the main event was brilliant as well. So yeah, I think that's the match people are waiting for, and then we just really have to see, obviously outside of Stardom and New Japan, we know Forbidden Door is on the horizon, All In is possibly there. Yeah, I just guess it's a thing of giving others opportunities while she's there. She doesn't necessarily need the title.
I asked the question last week, specifically to Gerard, actually, and I'm going to ask a very similar thing, or the follow-up, I guess, because of where we're at. Do you feel as though that this now hinders the championship itself with Mercedes not having it? Has it, you know, has this run been too short? Has this relationship with Mercedes Mone and the IWGP Women's Championship been short-lived?
It's interesting. That title was first awarded in October of 2022. So we're talking basically 6 months, November, December, January, February, March. Yeah, 6 months. And we've had 3 champions now. So that's not necessarily the greatest thing, though. In Japan, it's not, you know, crazy that there are short title reigns. I think about titles like the Never Openweight Championship, right? Which it's very hard to have a successful run as the Never Openweight Champion. But then you start thinking about the IWGP Heavyweight Championship and how we are accustomed to lengthier runs in that particular space. So I think there's a couple of things. One, for the championship itself to be I am a proponent that if a championship is to be valued, it has to stick with someone long enough for us to assign and ascribe value to it. It's the difference in my mind between what happened with the Intercontinental Championship and Gunther's reign versus the TNT Championship, which has been a virtual hot potato. So I think New Japan is going to have to be very, very careful with who becomes the next IWGP Women's Champion. Because if we're running 6 months, 3 different champions, that's an average of 2 months a champion, right? That's an average. Again, you know, you're looking at 1 successful title defense for Mercedes. I did that on purpose, and I'll tell you why. Because, well, let me go to why I did that. So Mercedes is historically known for having short title reigns, right? The longest title reign she had was something along the lines of like 198 days, but it was the NXT Women's Championship.
Oh,
yes. So it wasn't the Raw Women's Championship. It wasn't the Smack. It was the NXT. So at this point, in terms of the relationship between Mercedes, and the IWGP Women's Championship, the relationship is actually on brand. It is on brand with what we saw with Mercedes, right? The reason for that, and so I'm left to believe this, because a lot of internet fans were going, oh my God, this is WWE booking again. Maybe we are forced to have a different answer. And the different answer may be that Mercedes herself doesn't feel like she has to be champion. She's had way too many reigns without the title. And so when you start thinking about people like her famed trainer and inspiration, Dusty Rhodes, who had 3 title reigns as the NWA World Champion, but none of them were ever lengthy at all. So in a weird way, this could be her patterning herself after Dusty Rhodes, where Dusty realized, I'm more valuable chasing the championship than being the champion. And so Dusty was the great Dusty Rhodes, who we love and cherish and admire, but it was never because of his title reigns. And now we may have to answer that same question when it comes to Mercedes. Maybe we value her for everything but her championship reigns.
It's interesting. It brings up an interesting thought, because at the same time, there are so many greats that we can think of who were never really known as long-term champions or regular champions. The Undertaker's one of them. Eddie Guerrero's another one. There's been quite a few, to be honest. So that brings up a very interesting point. A question I was going to ask as well anyway, or a thought that I had, is we're talking about the status of this women's championship. You mentioned the never open weight, not many lengthy reigns against the world championship or the IWGP world championship has had lengthy reigns. But we have to remember as well that women's wrestling in New Japan is also very new.
Correct. So
could it be a thing where they don't necessarily put that value on it as much as we would want it to be, especially now that, Mercedes is involved and we want to see her have lengthy reign and, scrap this whole short reign stuff and whatnot. Do you think this is then the fault of New Japan for not necessarily putting the title on the pedestal that we probably think they should?
I think it's a few things. This is the challenge of New Japan and Stardom having the same owner. Right? So if I own two companies, one specializes in one thing, one specializes in the other, then there's really not a need for them to do what the opposite company does. Right? So the question now is, does New Japan really see a need for an organized women's division? There's a part of me that feels like maybe they created this title in response to what America has done in terms of its emphasis. You see the major companies with a women's championship. Okay, well, we should do that. But, one thing we've never seen with New Japan, even after creating this tournament, was they never had a formalized women's division. You'd see, Kyrie come and defend the title as kind of a special attraction, but you would never see a regular women's division match on a New Japan show because they save all of that for Stardom, which then lends us to ask the question, this could be why the IWGP Women's Championship hasn't main evented a show yet. Because for them, this is what Stardom does. And for Stardom, all of their other championships has far more length and history to it than the IWGP Women's Championship. So part of me feels like New Japan may have succumbed to a degree of pressure to create a title for a division that they're not fully vested in because it's cared for by Stardom.
Right. Mix, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that's exactly it. It's almost like we talk about often a lot, seeing ROH belts on AEW, and it's like, do we really care about this? Even though it's like one in the same entity. New Japan said they wanted to put some engine behind women's wrestling and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, Kyrie was given the first women's title under the New Japan banner. However, at the first opportunity New Japan had to really showcase it at Wrestle Kingdom, they gave Kyrie a 5-minute title defense and brought in Mercedes Mone, who basically squashed her and said, "I'm taking the belt off you." So it's all in name, that we're doing this in name rather than really investing into it. And we know, like we said, it's the same owner. So then what's above the other, the Stardom championship or the GP Women's Championship? Stardom have already booked the IWGP one secondary to their title on this previous show. I'm not sure whether they should just scrap. I mean, it's too early to do that, but scrap the IWGP Women's Championship and just use Stardom for the showcase stuff when they need to, rather than almost pretending that we're doing this and then not doing a real fleshed out job of it. Because if we say using the division now, for the IWGP Women's Division. We're just naming the Stardom roster.
Right.
So, yeah, I think the crossover is fine because there is, one owner anyway. Just they didn't need their own title or get rid of the Stardom top title when this is the title. You see what I mean? Like, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I completely forgot until the other day is that this championship is probably not even secondary. This is IWGP Women's Championship. You're gonna have the World Championship, probably even the United States Championship and whatever else before it, and then you've got Stardom, which as you both said is its own entity, has its own championships. And we've seen on Sunday, it was, their championship was booked above the IWGP. So I don't necessarily think we're dealing with an issue with Mercedes specifically, but more a New Japan issue. And I think that's what it is. Now, everyone's asking the question, or everyone's speculating, the rumors are going here and there, and everyone's giving their opinion. But the question is now being asked, what is next for Mercedes? Now, she's mentioned the date. Okay, brilliant. But at the same time, there's no hard contract. It's based on appearances and all the rest of it. Do you think in any way this will change what she does for the rest of the year, or what you expected her to do for the rest of the year, Gerard?
I don't. I think she's still going to do things with Japan as the home base, because title or not, and again, kind of going off of what we said earlier, we have come to love her not specifically for her title reigns, but for what she does in the ring, for her personality, all those kinds of things. She can still very much implement that and utilize that in Stardom, in New Japan, in all of those spaces where she still could, to some degree, run the division. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of a scenario. So I think she'll be okay, but the real questions will come, since and to me, this is also the problem with starting her as champion, right? It's always the question of, okay, we are good with watching the build because for most of us, the pinnacle of any division is winning the championship. Right. If you do that and you've lost it, now we've got to ask the question, where do you go from here? So I think for her, there are still a lot of dream matches to be had, certainly in Stardom, certainly if we're doing the crossover with AEW, or even, the Multiverse United 2 in Philly this summer with Impact. So there are enough matches for her to be able to have where people will want to still see her. I think for us, there is the allure of having the championship because it says you're running the division. It's hard to kind of prove that you're the number one person in the division without the championship.
And I think here's where the problem lies, or in hindsight, it should have gone this way, to where, yes, her coming out to Kyrie would have been absolutely fine, but giving her the chance and the championship straight away was probably the mistake. Right. She could come out to Kyrie, say she's coming for this championship, but then kind of build her way up, take on other people, other women and stuff, and then go for the championship. And then we kind of feel as though, it would feel better at this moment for her to still be chasing than for her to have the championship and lose it so quickly.
I agree.
And I think that's the issue we got here. I don't think it's going to affect, her decisions, or whether she still, does things with Japan, Stardom, and all the rest of it. As we know, she's kind of put it out there that she wants to move to Japan. But I've also heard little ramblings. There's this possibility of a return to the WWE under this new Triple H regime. Max, I see the face that you make, and I'm going to you with this one. Do you think is there any truth? Do you think that's a possibility in any way?
I don't think so. Like, we're not even sure if Triple H is the one running the roost right now, if he's in charge. So to kind of step back into that fogginess, I can't imagine someone that has all the freedom in the world would want to do that at this time. when, especially like we mentioned, you know, the opportunity at AEW, even if it's a short stint, and the massive London show they're planning in All In, like with all of that on the horizon, I just can't see why you would want to, unless they're literally, you know, have got U-Haul trucks filled with money backing up to her front door. Like,
Right.
It doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah.
Go to the Wrestling Realms comment as well in the chat. Thanks for joining us as well, of course, Mr. Waters. I honestly like her not winning the title right now. Build other stars, see her chase. And this is something that I said last week. I think I'm still excited for the chase. I'm still excited to see her, you know, take on others with there not being a championship involved. And I don't know. There's always that something. The one thing of wrestling history that I absolutely loved was when Kurt Angle came back in Impact, and he did this whole thing where he said, I'm gonna make sure you guys know I'm coming back for this title. I'm gonna start from the bottom and work my way up. And to see Mercedes do something similar, she doesn't have to obviously start from the bottom, but at the same time to kind of not even prove herself, but I can't think of a better word or better term, but to kind of prove herself against the rest of the Stardom roster, anyone else that she wants to face, will be exciting. To then see her go back for a championship, if it happens, will be exciting. It also then gives her, for me, I think it gives her more options as well. Being a champion, you have to face the absolute best. Whereas when you're not a champion, you can take on others, because we have to remember as well, they don't do a weekly show.
Right.
So for her to just have a match with whoever and whatever else on a weekly basis would be fine. But she does showcase matches. It gives her the chance to face some of the up and coming stars, some people who, I don't know, we probably don't even know too much about, stuff like that. So it actually gives her a little bit more freedom in a very weird way. So I'm excited to see what happens. Does anyone else have any kind of thought of on Mercedes and, you know, just what this future holds for her at all?
I think it gets to be great for her. I really do. Again, her not working every week gives her the opportunity to give us crazy matches, physical matches, and gives her time to be able to heal, to give us another one. You know, the other thing is there's a demand for her. We as fans, because we know we can't see her every week, any opportunity we get to see her, we're going to flock to it. If she's fighting a broom, we're going to go watch it, right? Like, because it's her. So knowing that we're not going to get 52 chances to see her this year, the chances we get, we're going to take. And in the process, if we meet new wrestlers, even better. So I think she's going to be just fine.
Yeah. Speaking of championships, it was unveiled yesterday on Raw. I think Mex predicted this as well, actually. That Triple H and the WWE, of course, have unveiled the new WWE World Heavyweight Championship. It looks beautiful in my eyes. The question is, who will be crowned the new World Heavyweight Champion come Night of Champions? Mex, give me your thoughts on this whole new unveiling, what it means for WWE, and any kind of potential favorites you have to win this championship.
So unfortunately, what we wanted out of this long reign for Roman having it is him to be dethroned.
Yes.
And they've basically said last night, that's not happening. We're not dethroning him. Not right now anyway. And of course, now we need to satisfy the other brand. If he's going to move to whichever brand, Fox, because he's got the big, he's doing the numbers over there, innit? So let's be honest with ourselves. Like, USA ain't having him. So this belt is probably going to be on Raw. And it's going to be very interesting. You would think to finish the story, the likes of Cody would move over there to Fox as well. That might leave USA a bit short on drawability and big stars. you would want maybe Seth Rollins to move over to Fox just to change up his atmosphere. But for me, Seth Rollins is a number one contender in winning this championship. If Cody wins it, it's almost like a cop out. Like, oh, you didn't beat Roman, have this instead. I mean, the belt kind of reeks of that anyway. Like, none of you, man, could beat Roman, so this is something else. Right. But, you know, we've seen stuff like this before. Lesnar in, I think, 2003, and then, you know, when Bischoff brought back the world title and just gave it to Triple H. And I think as recent as that last brand split, was it 2016, when Dean Ambrose took the world championship to SmackDown, and then I think they came up with the Universal title with Finn Balor and Rollins fought for. So we've seen this before. I think with this story going on right now, what we were also invested in is just, it really hasn't kind of given us the conclusion we probably thought we were getting. The belt is nice. I would say it's a nod between Triple H trying to honor the past and the heritage and all of that kind of stuff with big gold, at the same time having to keep his senior management happy with the big WWE logos and the branding on it as well. So a bit of compromise on the design, but I think it's all right. It'll definitely grow on people. It's a good title. Funny enough, before this title was unveiled, I was thinking from the weekend, I'm watching SmackDown, right? And randomly, like everyone else found out, Omos versus Seth Rollins at Backlash. And I said to myself, what? I'm questioning, wait, I watch this every week. Did I miss something? Like, when did they build this? And then I just thought, I haven't missed anything. Everyone's saying that this wasn't previously, you know, put anywhere. The first thing I said to myself is, they're going to make Omos the world champion. I said to myself, I dare them to make Omos be the man to dethrone Roman. Because we know Vince is about. So, and almost getting these random pushes, this very random match, which MVP brokered, okay, but not on TV. Like, I just have a funny feeling that Omos is, whether you like it or not, he is somewhere in this possible conversation. If they do a tournament for this world title, he's going to be in it at the very least. So maybe this Rollins versus match, Rollins versus Omas match at Backlash, will tell a bit more of a story throughout the month of May. Although I would imagine a finals of any tournament would probably be Rollins versus Cody. I wouldn't be surprised if Rollins versus Omos was the final for this in Saudi Arabia. And then God knows what happens from there. I might have to close my eyes and just someone tell me the result. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Gerard,
wow. Now here's what's interesting. I promise you, before we came on today, and in my head how I'm preparing, I thought to myself, you know, we need to be paying attention to what's happening with Omos, because they are not handing him top tier opponents because they have nothing better to do. They handed him Brock Lesnar at I mean, we can go back to his first WrestleMania where he walks in, first match ever, teaming with the great AJ Styles, and they become the tag team champions by beating the New Day, right? Like that. But then his second Mania, he gets Bobby Lashley. His third Mania, he gets Brock Lesnar. And now he gets Seth. They are putting this man in top tier spaces for a reason. Now, my brain hadn't quite gone to the World Championship yet, but it certainly was logging in. Why are they giving this man? And then the things that Seth had to say about him last night. Seth, you're the largest man I've ever seen in my life. You're the this, you're the that. Now, I'm not afraid of you, but you're all the... And he's coming out in suits. The champions wear suits. Wow.
It's possible.
Wow.
It is possible.
It is. Now I have some other ideas in terms of who could be the world champion, but
yeah.
I think you've messed my head up with this, Max. Now, my other thoughts included Lashley, even though he's involved in this U.S. title thing. I think that could change in a heartbeat. I think we can't ignore Drew McIntyre whenever he comes back from injury. Sheamus is a possibility. Gunther is a real possibility. There are some names. I think Cody would be a cop-out. I think Cody, there's no finishing the story if Cody just goes after the other championship. So I think there are some really valuable names that could end up in a tournament space. Of course, Seth. But this Omas thing, it is odd enough. I heard somebody mention Dominic too.
No.
Which let me say this. Here's the thing.
No.
All these people were saying no at. Let me take you back to December of 2001 when you had Kurt Angle, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Chris Jericho in a tournament for the Undisputed World Championship, and everybody picked anybody but Chris Jericho.
Right.
And at the end of the night, we went,
yep.
It's not. Oh,
the
God.
one thing I thought about today is that obviously, like we said, when they done this in 2016, they had just had the draft. They brought up a quote unquote relative unknown in Finn Balor. Finn Balor went the mile and Finn Balor won the Universal Championship. Yes, he got injured, etc. afterwards. This could be a way to kind of crown the next guy.
Yes.
Whether that is currently in front of us on main roster or coming up from NXT if they're going to have this draft in between. So this is why, as scary as it is, you can't really rule out Omos at this time.
You can't. Because all of the other names that we've mentioned outside of Bobby Lashley have had opportunities at Roman and lost. Seth, of course, was a disqualification situation. So if somebody who couldn't beat Roman wins this championship, it automatically devalues the title. Automatically. So you can't have Cody, Seth maybe because, again, the disqualification. But you can't have Cody, can't have Kevin Owens, can't have Drew, can't have Sheamus. Gunther maybe because he hasn't had a shot. But if anybody who has had a shot, because the other thing Triple H said was, he's fought all these men and nobody could beat him. Those folks in my mind then can't turn around and just become a secondary world champion. It's like going over to WCW back in the day and winning that title. Oh, I'm a world champion. Like, no, if you couldn't cut it here, then you can't still be here and we call you a world champion. So, Max.
I mean, you're right. That's a good way to summarize it. They of course they can win the title down the line, but they cannot be the first champion.
Right.
Because yes, cop out, Roman's beating you. Now you just come over here and won this thing.
Right.
So we are possibly looking at either a Seth Rollins or a first-time world champion, basically.
This conversation's blown my mind because I'm now thinking here, there, and everywhere. My first thought was only two people, Seth or Lashley. For me, they're the only two that makes complete sense. Gunther is a credible one, but because he's still the Intercontinental Champion, I'm just like, okay, let's not do it just yet. Not the first one, at least. The whole Omas situation is this. Remember, there were two world championships at one point: the WWE Championship, the World Heavyweight Championship. There was another big black guy who won the World Heavyweight Championship that no one expected whatsoever. His name being Mark Henry.
Correct.
That came out of absolutely nowhere. He beat Randy Orton. Nobody expected that. His run was decent. He is now known as a former world champion. And also as well, the other thing is this championship is straight away secondary to the Undisputed Universal Championship. Straight away. There's no questions about it. That I don't think there's any other way to see it. So to put that title on Omos wouldn't then be, he is the top guy in the company. So the possibility is still there. Whether he becomes the first one, I don't think he'll become the first one, but there's definitely a chance he'll have that championship at some point. So, and with the history that Gerard went through as well in terms of his matches, we forgot he had the whole thing with Braun Strowman as well.
Right.
At that time, Braun Strowman was, one of the main guys.
And they did that in Saudi too.
Exactly. And here's the other thing about the whole Saudi thing. He's a big black man.
He's an attraction, which they love.
Yes,
Exactly.
he's an attraction.
Exactly.
And if they crown him in Saudi, they're not going to get a smart US crowd booing, probably.
Very
Right?
true.
Right.
Wow. Almost
Right.
the world champion.
Wow.
There's a possibility.
Wow.
I thought this on Saturday when I watched SmackDown. I said, they're going to make this guy world champion.
Wow.
And then when they unveiled this belt and I watched it this morning, I said, my God, they're going to make him a world champion.
Wow. Holy cow.
So it's going to be interesting to see what the outcome of this Seth Rollins Omos match is going to be. I wouldn't be too surprised if he won. It wouldn't then, it doesn't then give you, oh, he's definitely winning the championship now. It's just makes the whole thing a little bit more interesting, a little bit more intriguing. But yeah, Omos is a possibility. The other guy that I wanted to speak about, that I thought we were going to speak about, was Bobby Lashley. I mean, we know he's now kind of still in this whole thing with this US Championship. Even said to Austin Theory, "You're holding my championship." So he's very much still kind of focused on this United States Championship. So I'm like,
oh boy,
I don't know. Change focus, please.
You just messed my whole thing up. Because imagine a world, we're in Puerto Rico, Bobby Lashley wins the US title, and then Austin Theory goes after this new world championship.
And that was the other name I was going to mention. Austin Theory is a strong possibility. Very strong possibility.
Yeah.
And we talk about the possible NXT or the possible first ever first time world champion. We've got Bron Breakker in the mix. It would be a similar situation to when Finn Balor came up.
Sure.
So that's maybe a possibility as well. But I'm still, even with all this stuff that is tangible, my mind's still going to Seth Rollins as the main man. For me, Cody, let's not do that. Way too early for that. Maybe down the line, blah, blah, blah. Way too early for that. Others that Roman has faced, it's still possible because it was a while ago. We kind of maybe forgotten about it in a way. But at the same time, it would be better for them not to do that, for sure. But yeah, for me, Seth Rollins is the main guy. But this whole Omos thing, Bobby Lashley probably not winning it. Austin Theory probably winning it. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess now. I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go logically. Interesting.
Wow.
Obviously they've still got, the Night of Champions, the final when they do the crowning is right at the end of May. We've literally got a month to decide how we're gonna do this. This is a good opportunity to give us as fans something good on TV, make us intrigued to watch Raw. They'll probably do all the matches on Raw. Give us a next week, give us some brackets, give us like a tournament of who's gonna be in this, and give us some good matches along the way. I think that's the very least you can do to kind of soften the pain of how you've got to this point.
True,
and then even if the brackets are somewhat predictable as to he's gonna reach the final and he's gonna reach the final, like let's enjoy the ride. And hey, if it is Omos or some other kind of an Austin Theory or someone like that, like just make it make sense. Make it make sense. And you've got the best part of 4 weeks at this point, 5 weeks to build, even if it is going to be Omos, to build and make us believe that this guy is the Nigerian giant. He is the monster that you're selling him as. Like you've got time to do it. So yeah, let's crown whoever this person is going to be in good fashion.
It's going to be interesting, but I think they definitely need to, if it is an Omos thing, the mistake that they've made with Omos in between these big matches that he's had is that he hasn't had any big matches in between.
Right.
He doesn't have any decent matches on Raw. It's always these squash matches with local competitors, two small guys, or squashing Elias or Mustafa Ali, who they don't necessarily regard as a great guy or great wrestler maybe, and all of that. So they definitely need to switch up the types of opponents he has in any type of run if they're putting this championship on him. If
he's going to win, I was just going to add, if he's going to win, and you're doing a tournament, He beats Bobby Lashley. He beats Bronson Reed. He beats Braun Strowman. Like, flat out, not even MVP getting involved. Like, they have solid matches, and it's like, okay, he's overcoming people his size. Maybe give him some type of smaller, trickier customer, like a Finn Balor or someone like that. He finds a way to overcome him. Like, if you're going to do this, which a lot of people will still be, you know, have their reservations about, just make sure you do it with style. Make sure it's done. So it's like, well, look, we've got 5 weeks worth of evidence as to why this guy has put his name in the hat. Make us believe it. Make us believe it.
Yeah. And I think regardless, even if they don't put the championship on him straight away or, you know, whatever else, I think they just need to switch it up anyway, because I think for me, that's the one thing that's missing for people to believe in Omos, is the fact that his opponents in between or on a weekly basis or on a regular basis just haven't been anything to shout about. So we're just like, all right, you're just giving us this guy just to give us this guy. So, you know, it's going to be interesting. Keeping on the subject of champions and championships, the other championship we know is on the line this Wednesday on Dynamite is Jade Cargill, and she'll be defending her championship, her TBS championship, against Taya Valkyrie. I'm seeing the faces. I'm seeing the reactions. I think I know what we want or expect or we believe the outcome should be. That being, Jade Cargill probably now needs to lose. Taya Valkyrie would be more than enough of a credible winner of the championship as well, and ending Jade's streak. But I guess my question is, her losing this championship, is it something that has to happen because of Jade, or is it something that has to happen because of the way she's been booked? Gerard, what are your thoughts on the reason why you think it's time for Jade to maybe lose the championship?
I think if there is a reason for her to lose, it has to be because she has maxed out her capacity at this level of what we have been led to believe the TBS Championship is. The competitors and the opponents in that division, and I use that in quotes, because they've really tried to keep those competing for the TBS Championship apart from those keep competing for the women's world title. Jade, based on her matches, based on her personality, based on her mainstream appeal, is world championship material. So it seems as though the only way to get her there is to have her lose the TBS Championship. So really, I think her losing in the strangest of ways becomes a win for the TBS Championship, because you get somebody as experienced as Taya Valkyrie now being the top of that part of the division. So now lots of people have to step up. It allows Jade to be elevated to the World Championship division, thus creating more competitors or opportunities for people to fight for the world title, because right now we don't have any real competitors for the World Championship, no contenders. You know, it's just this whole fight with everything outcasts. So I think Jade has to lose for the betterment of everything involved in here. TBS Championship, Taya Valkyrie, and Jade herself, and the women's world title.
We were talking earlier about Sasha having a short run and what that means for the IWGP Women's Championship. We're actually on the flip side of that, the opposite extreme of someone holding the championship for maybe too long, and that they're now almost discrediting both the champion and the championship. Mex, do you feel that that's the case here with Jade and the TBS? Are the other women within the division or within that space of the division losing out because Jade's held it for maybe too long?
They are to a certain degree, but I don't feel like AEW have quite done Jade justice, even in the whole 50, however many, matches, unbeaten streak she's been on. Like, I hate to sound harsh, and there probably has been an improvement and stuff, but in my opinion, there hasn't been much of a visible improvement from maybe, I don't know what number she was on when she won the championship, but to this point. So if we say she's had, I don't know, maybe 30 defenses or 25, let's kind of cut it down the middle. Like, I don't feel like since she's become champion, we've seen a great amount of growth in her ability or anything like that. I was saying this to NK last week on my channel. Like, I don't think she's improving, or I don't think she's wrestling enough to make that improvement. And I don't know whether that's because it's just like, okay, well, if we put her on TV, she has to win, and they're kind of in that kind of quandary, like it's too much to kind of, oh, can we book her to lose or anything like that? Like, she's not as champion. No, you can't book her to lose because that means she drops the belt. So I think they need to kind of, for the betterment of Jade as a performer, if that's what both parties want. Of course, you can get by being a star wrestler without much ability or anything like that. But if she wants to improve, we need to see something different. Of just booking, having more opportunity to just have more matches. I think that's what will do her good. I think they've started kind of giving her more in the way of promo segments and stuff like that, especially out in front of the live audience and not backstage. She nails that stuff now. That stuff is second nature to her. And I would argue we always knew she had that in the bag. Like, now it's the wrestling that needs to kind of catch up so that by the time she becomes world champion, which is inevitable, like right now she's following at least Toni Storm, who we know is a fantastic wrestler, as champion, Jamie Hayter, who's knocking it out of the park right now as champion. You don't want to be that person that then wins the championship and people lose interest in the belt that they've built up and all of that kind of stuff. Again, I'm not really blaming her. Obviously, she's sent out. She does what, if they put squash matches in front of her, then that's it. My only issue with this particular match on Wednesday is that if they are going to do this after 50-something wins, after this undefeated streak since she began her life as a wrestler in AEW, why is it on Wednesday night? I don't even care if they put it in the main event. Like, this should be built as a pay-per-view angle. I think we were talking last week that Taya Valkyrie, like, she's had like maybe 2 or 3 matches herself, like a couple of interactions with Jade. This doesn't feel big time enough yet, as it should. Maybe they're doing this on purpose because they don't want to kind of overshadow the main women's champion in Jamie Hayter, and she's obviously embroiled right now in, you know, this gang warfare stuff they're doing and not really have her own kind of solo story. But you've made us invested. She's nearly won 60 matches, you know, like the payoff the moment she loses has to be big. Even if they make this AEW Dynamite a main event match, like I was saying, I'm not sure if that's enough, just because I don't think the story is there yet. So that's my only reservation. If she is to drop the title, which I do think is needed, it just has to be done a bit more on a bigger scale and not here.
I have a scary thought. You ready for this? Here we go. Let's break the internet right now. Is it possible that Omas is better than Jade Cargill?
Ooh.
Let me prove an interesting point here. We talked before about Omas and the opponents they've been feeding him. They have fed him main event level caliber opponents. When you do that, you can't help but to get better. You only get better when you wrestle or compete against people that are better than you.
Yeah.
And so for Jade, because she's been put in the ring with folks who aren't better than her, she doesn't get a chance. What do you learn from local talent? Like, what do you learn from that? What do you learn from folks who've been fighting on Dark the whole time? Right? She needs to have been put in the ring against some other main event level caliber folks for her to improve. And here's what they could have done. What they should have done was taken a page out of what they're doing in Ring of Honor and giving her kind of this championship qualifier kind of match. So what should have happened was Taya fights her in a championship qualifier match. Taya wins and breaks the streak, but she's still champion. So now we get to figure out, okay, her back's against the wall. The champion is lost. The only person to beat her is Taya. Now we need to see, can Taya do it again for the championship? at the pay-per-view. Now we get to find out, how does Jade respond to a loss? What will she do? And what has she learned from this main event caliber world-traveled star like Taya Valkyrie? It's unfortunate they've not given Jade. So I don't know that I blame Jade for that. Jade doesn't get to pick her opponents. You know what I mean? But because they didn't pick better opponents for her, we're talking about Omas potentially becoming a world champion. We literally just said that Omas could become a world champion. And we're questioning if Jade can hang in the world title picture. Yet Jade is the one that's undefeated.
I think there's definitely an argument in this. And especially if the question being asked is more about how have they been booked, how have they been used, how overtime and stuff like that. But there's two sides of this argument. We look at the matches or the big matches that Omos has had, be it about 5 in 3 or 4 years. Yeah. But as I said earlier, the in-between has been like, what's the point? Whereas with Jade, she's probably had 2 credible opponents, that being Athena and Nyla Rose. Maybe her winning against Ruby Soho was probably, a bit of a thing as well. Of course, that was her first, her winning the championship. The in-between hasn't been the best, but at the same time, it's with the title on the line, so you're a little bit more invested in it. So it's
but
not
we didn't
easy
believe most of those people were going to beat her.
True.
So we weren't that invested. We were like, okay, we're going to get to 50. Who's it going to be at 50? And it was a squash at 50.
Yes, it was.
So that's the hard part here is Omas has been Omas has been trusted with more than Jade Cargill. What are we doing here? What are we doing? You've given Omas former world champions. From Braun Strowman to Brock to Bobby Lashley and now Seth Rollins. He's been trusted with that. He teamed with AJ Styles for a year, right? They sat him under the learning tree as a champion. And they went out and fought the Street Profits and the New Day and all of these folks and eventually lost to the Usos. So, I'm sorry, RK Bro. Even RK Bro, right? Like, we're talking main event caliber people that they have trusted Omas in the ring with. You mean to tell me that you can't find anybody on that level? Who's the main event people that they have put Jade Cargill in the ring with? Maybe Nyla Rose.
Yep.
They didn't give Jade Serena Deeb, did they?
No. Nope.
They did not.
No.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, like that's a no-brainer because she's there to basically help elevate these women.
Right.
So if they're not even giving her to Serena Deeb,
no Serena, no Britt, no Hayter, no Thunder Rosa, no Tony Storm. Like, that's your whole main event crew in terms of world champions. They haven't even touched them.
Interesting. But at the same time,
Blue. No offense to Sky Blue.
I like Sky, but in terms of development, it's not the
you're not thinking, of course. But at the same time, if you were to put the poll out on the internet of who's better or who do you prefer, blah, 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 I'm sure a great majority would say Jade.
It's because Jade is more charismatic. Jade is more appealing, Like, people want to see Jade. When you look at Jade, so Jade and Omas, I can't believe we're talking about this. Jade and Omas, they are both attractions, but for different reasons.
Very different reasons.
Omas is that 7'3" person that you will stare at no matter where you see. We're not even getting into ability. Jade has an amazing look. She looks like a superhero. She talks like, nobody's business. And then when you see her actually move, you're like, okay, she's a superhero. I almost don't care what she does. Right? Omas is a different reason. But yet, for whatever reason, WWE says, hey, we're going to give you more Omas. Why hasn't AEW trusted Jade Cargill in the main event picture?
But this is my issue with this whole thing with Jade and this TBS Championship is that AEW have dropped the ball so hard with Jade in terms of her opponents and all the rest of it. Because all her opponents, even title defenses, have been, you know, the local competitors, your Sky Blues, I don't even know who that random Canadian woman was.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's people like that, and you're just like, why are we doing this? You know, you did this whole thing of building building a Canadian female wrestler that she's gonna face.
Right.
And you gave us Ty Valkyrie with the interruption afterwards and blah blah blah. But why the build up for that? So yeah, and even with the whole Red Velvet thing, dropped the ball. It was a long-term rivalry. It could have been done way better. Yes, we still would have thought Jade was going to win, but at the same time, we would have had this little thing in the back of our mind. Oh, is it possible that, you know, Red Velvet might win? It's a very, very weird comparison, but at the same time, a very intriguing one. The way that, you know, Jade and Omas have been handled, treated, and used. Yeah, crazy one. Mex, you mentioned not too long ago about this match being on Dynamite, and there not being this big build, this not feeling like a main event or pay-per-view caliber type of match. Does that give any kind of inkling that there's a possibility Jade retains?
That's what I want to happen. I think what they should do is, because they've already booked this match, Jade, Layla Gray, they find a way to keep the championship. We have 2 to 3 more weeks until Double or Nothing, and maybe Ty Valkyrie wins at Double or Nothing.
Right.
I think that's where you go, because although, yeah, we're saying they haven't done much of anything with Jade recently with this championship, she is still undefeated. She is still being the only person to carry this championship. So she has to go out in style somewhat. You see what I mean? So, yeah, do some type of, you know, not like a DQ finish or something like that, but like, yeah, she cheats to win. She finds a way between her and her baddie, and yeah, they circle round to this at the pay-per-view. Maybe a street fight, or maybe some type of, I don't know, cage match to stop Layla Gray getting involved or something. And that's where she loses the title.
Do you still think, though, that there's a possibility of kind of giving the TBS Championship a bit too much of a spectacle because of the Women's World Championship? Because we've got to remember, this is the TBS Championship, which is like the TNT Championship.
The mid.
So, yeah, you know what I mean? It's the secondary championship. So
look, at the very least, they're gonna put 15 matches on this pay-per-view. You can't tell me one of them can't be the TBS in the middle of the card somewhere.
Right.
Like we saw them do 8 or 9 at the last pay-per-view, and that's only because they had a 60-minute Iron Man match.
Right.
So they're gonna return to doing their 14 or 15 matches. One of them has got to be for the TBS title.
I agree.
Gerard, do you think that there's this chance of, you know, AEW feeling as though the TBS Championship needs to be defended on the weekly show in order to give us a championship match on a weekly show, as opposed to it having to be on a pay-per-view?
It's tough. I mean, they call it the TBS Championship, so obviously it should be defended on TBS. I mean, that makes sense. But I also think that pay-per-views are for championships. Right. You know, that's where they should be defended. So should there be some defenses on TV? Yes. But I think also the big time prestigious matches should make their way to the pay-per-view. So I hope that, I mean, they've put the TNT Championship on the pay-per-view.
Of course.
So the TBS Championship should be on the pay-per-view as well. But I'm not against it being defended on TBS. I mean, that kind of makes sense based on its name sense. Yeah.
I guess with it being Ty Valkyrie, it just feels as though it should be a much bigger.
That should be bigger.
Should definitely be a much
like
bigger match.
Again, I don't think we're complaining if you get these ancillary ones on TV but you get a big time feel match for pay-per-view. That's what it should be for, you know.
Fair enough. Speaking of big time, our time is up. It's been a big time show. We've spoken a lot. But guys, you have been watching WrstlXtra on the WrestleManiac UK YouTube channel. Of course, as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to remind yourself of when this guy Mex, the WrestleManiac, puts out all of his reactions and news to WWE and AEW as well. You can follow him as well on WrestleManiac UK on Instagram, WrestleManiac.uk on Instagram, WrestleManiac UK on Twitter. I got that right. You can also follow this guy, Gerard Bonner, the Professor, on all things Bonafide, as well as his own show, The Faction Show. Catch him on WWT Live. Battle Slam was just the other day. You can catch that. Is that available at the minute? Is that out?
It'll be available soon. It'll be available
very
soon.
soon.
On Fight.
Okay. Cool. And of course, you can follow me, A Dazzle, on Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram, BWA Dazzle on Twitter when I can be bothered. But guys, this has been the end of our show. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you again next time.
See you later, guys.